Well, I was born in Kentucky, Waco, but, funny story. The courthouse and the Hall Records for in Richmond, who takes the birth certificates and the death certificate, burned down,
Okay.
and everything was lost. And I was still a very little tot, just born a couple days or whatever. And my dad had a business in Cincinnati. And when we would work all summer, and then he would go back to Cincinnati, and we would stay in Cincinnati to get off the farm because of winter, and he would do his business. He had a bicycle shop in wagons,
cool.
and he would fix bikes and all that stuff. And then when the when spring comes, we go back to the farm because planting or whatever's going on. Well, I was raised that way year on year, whatever. And so I would go back and forth, and I grew up doing that, and then it was a unbelievable different type of life for a kid. Well, anyway, the story goes, I was only a couple days old, and my mom went to the General Hospital in Cincinnati and said I was born in a car in Waterfront, so they gave her a birth certificate saying that Jim Winburn, James would be Winburn, the doctor signed it and all that stuff, and that's where I was born at.
So did you gain a couple days by doing that with the certificate being a little bit different?
Well, if I had my passport, I can show you the birth certificate because I got it. But they believed her, I guess, and they gave her a birth certificate.
Okay, that's cool.
And they asked her a lot of questions. This is like 1937,
Okay, yeah.
And, the war in Europe and all this stuff was going on, and so they made a birth certificate out of it. And so I was born, and they even put a time in when I was born, my mom said, oh, we were in the car trying to get to the hospital, and he was born at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was.
That one.
And they put all that stuff just like a regular birth certificate.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I was later told when I was a teen that I was actually born in Waco, Kentucky.
Okay, cool.
And that the courthouse and the record building burned down and all the records.
So your mom staked you a new one. That's kind of cool, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
My mother was cool anyway. She was a very attractive lady, but she was a farm girl. All she knew how to do is cook, can, and have babies. That's all,
Back then.
It was a different world back then.
World back then.
But she was a hard worker.
Right. Well, I mean, that's farm people always are, and that's what America, the backbone's been built on. So it sounds like from the get-go, it's been an adventure in your life.
Yeah.
It's been different than normal, I guess, one of the questions I have to ask is the Michael Myers role. That's the one that people always kind of, I guess, associate you most with. But I know you also worked on like Escape from New York and things of that nature. But the Michael Myers role, how does that come about, Jim? How did you end up getting into that role, doing the stunts for it? You've worked with Carpenter before, Tell me about it. How'd you kind of come into that?
Well, the storyline, what happened is I was under contract at Warner Brothers at that time.
Okay.
I was doing a police story, and a lot of shows out of Warner Brothers because I was contracted mostly for police story. And my answering service was with Teddy O'Toole at that time with the phone system because we didn't have all these modern electronic stuff that we get today. And we had beepers. And Deborah Hill, who was a very close friend of mine and a personal friend of mine, we worked and Dean Cunny, the cameraman on that show, and Ray Stella, and a lot of the grips and the gaffers. And we were all a small, low-budget, non-union crew. They were doing a lot of low-budget SAG films of under $300,000, but they were all non-union. Well, Deborah and John Carpenter wrote the script, and John was going to direct it and she was going to produce it. Then they were going to bring in Don Barron as the production manager because he was on all the other shows with Deborah and I and all that. So anyway, she kept calling and they kept beeping me, and I was swinging cars down in Los Angeles.
That's
and
cool.
So we got done, and we were sitting in there, and so I went to a phone, and I called my answering service, and she said, Deborah Hill's calling, and they want you to come to work tonight. Can you do it? And I said, well, I don't know. I have to ask the coordinator, which was Dick Butler, if I could get off. And that's the worst thing you can do to a coordinator. Say, hey, can I get off to go to another show? And so it was not a good thing, right?
Sniping my talent.
Yeah. So anyway, he got a little uptight about it, and so I went back with the other guys, and we were doing, dressed like police officers and playing little parts here and there. And they decided to wrap at around 5 o'clock because they had to move to another location with the actors to film those actors in a building or wherever they were doing, and they didn't need the stunt guys.
Okay.
So I said, well, you're wrapped. So I called Teddy's and told them to call Deborah Hill that I would be over there as soon as I leave Los Angeles to drive over to Hollywood Beverly Hills off of Sunset Boulevard on Orange Grove Avenue, and which is right down the street from the Screen Actor Guild building at that time.
Cool.
And so I pulled up and walked up the driveway. The people who put up the money, the $300,000, was the agency for the distribution. I think Yang Bang or Yang Bar or whatever their name was, which were Arabs, so Iraqis. And later on, he got killed in Iraq. In fact,
oh wow.
He went home and visited, and he was in an ice cream shop, and they blew the shop up, and
wow.
he died, he and his family and all that,
Yeah,
which was a very sad story. But anyway, so I was talking to him by the table with the coffees and all that stuff, because like I say, it's a little, but they don't have catering.
Yeah, no green room.
Yeah, and he said, well, they're inside filming. So I went and sat down, and then Donald Pleasant came in.
Cool, man. I love Donald Pleasant. So I was wondering if you...
This was his first night, because he only was going to be in the show for 1 week, and they paid him $10,000 for that 1 week of work. And so we just finished the show a number of weeks earlier over at Universal, which he starred in, and I got to work with him, and we had some fun. He's a gentleman, perfect gentleman.
Cool.
Professional inside and out. As an Englishman, his education was 100% great. Mm-hmm. And working with him, pleasant, it was just beautiful. And so we were sitting down when he pulled up, and he saw me, hey, how you doing, Jim? I mean, that's the way he was, in his dialogue. So we sit down, we're shooting the breeze, and then suddenly the door opened of the house. Out come Don Barron, Deborah Hill, John Carpenter, Dean Cunny, the camera guy, Tommy Lee Wallace, the production supervisor, and all these people came out, and the ADs, and we sit down, and they introduced me to John. Because I knew all the crew, because we did at least 5, 6, or 7 films before that, which were low-budget films. So we all knew how we worked.
Right.
And that's why they wanted me there, because they knew how I worked.
Okay, cool.
And I'm very safety-minded, and I don't want anybody hurt, especially me.
Right.
So what happened is they introduced me to John, and John grabbed my hand, and he says, follow me. He says, I want you to stay at my side. So we went back in the house, and he said, look, we got a problem. And I said, oh boy, every show has a problem.
Always starts with a problem.
And he said, we have a curfew, a filming curfew in this area. We have to get everything done outside before 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Or we get a big ticket. They got to move the trucks, they got to move the cars, everything's got to move down on Sunset Boulevard, and et cetera, and they have to move in the house, but they have to keep the lighting down and the noise and all that stuff. So I said, okay. Didn't affect me, because I didn't know exactly what was going on.
Yeah, still
and so we went in, and they said, we're going to do this. We went up the stairs, and I met Tony Moran.
Okay.
And Tony Moran was brought in, and he was the sister of the Moran girl who played on Happy Days. And he needed a job to get his A card, which is Screen Actor Guild card. And so Deborah Hill and, what's her name, the actress, they knew her real well, and so they brought him, Tony Moran in to do the part, because they needed a real young guy's face and all that. Tommy Lee Wallace couldn't do it because he was in his 30s. Mm-hmm. Nick Castle didn't look anywhere like a son or whatever.
Right,
you know.
right.
And I was almost, I think I was going on 40 years old.
Okay.
And somewhere around that 39 or 40 or whatever. And
We'll
so
call it 38.
I didn't, yeah, we'll say 38, that's better.
Yeah.
Then what happened is that none of us could put the mask on and take it off because we looked too old. You know, and so they wanted a young face, so they brought Tony Moran, and that's what he did. So he had a couple days. And then after that, it was now 15, I think it was 15, somewhere around 15 minutes after 9. And done, we have to do the high fall because it's outside.
So you're out the window.
Yeah, and so we shot, Tony did the thing, then they put me in there, because when Tony stood by me, we looked like Mutt and Jeff. You know, I was much taller and everything. And so whatever he did, they reshot it with me.
Okay.
For editorial purposes. And he went through the door, and then I went through the door. And then what we did is they shot me all the way back to the railing, and then we cut, and then we pulled the cameras. Now it's 9:30, something like that,
Yeah, closer,
9:35. So they took the cameras down. Previously to that, I called a stunt buddy. He went over to my house in my big garage and got the pad that I told him, and he brought the pad over for me.
Okay.
Because I didn't have a chance to drive all the way over to Toluca Lake and back there. And so a good friend of mine did it and brought it over, and we set up the pad, and I looked at the where it's going to be at, and then I put coffee cups underneath the pad, and the camera was right at the edge of the pad this way. And the reason I put coffee cup is because compression of the air always forces your body back up.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go back up in the camera after I cleared
You
it.
didn't want to bounce up.
Yeah,
And have
so
it
the coffee cup,
appear in the bottom.
when the pad explodes with the air, I sink down, the coffee cup now takes away that curve, and I don't
bounce back up.
bounce back up into clean shot.
Cool.
And so the cameras in, I went up there, put the mask on, and it was excuse me, but,
You're fine. You can whistle.
and then we went up there, and I put the mask on and everything, and then I said action, and I went through the railing in the roofing area, which was very small. And before I did it, John Carpenter talked to me, and he wanted not a wild fall.
No.
He wanted a character fall of the character of Michael Myers walking, the way he stands there, and all the stuff. He wanted to continue that in the air.
Stone and robotic.
Yeah.
Even in the air.
And I said, well, I'll do my best, you know, as long as I don't hit my head on the and it flips me or my knees or whatever, being a long dude I am. So anyway, on action I went, and as soon as my head cleared the roof, I could fairly see it, and my knees didn't hit it. I was there. I went into the form while I was still going straight.
Right.
And then I came down, and it was perfect, and I went through that, and everything was good in a one take. And it's a wrap, and we moved all the cameras, all the pads,
Everything inside.
all the trucks off.
Everything
We all went
inside.
inside because of the permit.
Okay, cool.
And that's how it happened.
That's amazing, man. That's like history. That's cinematographic history right there.
Yeah, and we went inside, and we shot all night long, and then about 5:30 in the morning, I went back to Warner Brothers and started swinging cars down
Oh,
Los Angeles
jeez.
to finish up what we did that day.
24 hours.
Yeah, you know, to me, I did it for a friend. To me, it was just another low budget. I've done so many of those. Don Edmonds production, Mustang, and all those guys. They didn't have any money, but they had the heart, and
Right.
they were professionals, and they understood the progressives of stunts and acting and liability and all that
Right.
stuff, and to make a film, you know. And Dean Cunny was a tremendous effort on the shows we did on those low budgets as the DP, and Ray Stella as the cameraman, and all his crew of putting these independent shows, martial arts, fights, and car stuff, and working together with just power steering.
Yeah.
He was so professional, and today he's one of the biggest DP with Ray Stella still with him, and he's won awards and everything. He's done shows that blow you out of the mind
Right.
because he was so talented way back when that his education and information and his talent and all stuff has grown to make him better.
Right, soaked it up with
Yeah,
experience.
so he's a wonderful guy,
Right.
and he's probably one of the best DPs that I know. Some of the old timers are gone now
Right, right.
that did Wayne and all and Stewart and all those guys, and I got to work with him on the Gong Show movie.
That's cool. I saw that on your IMDb credits,
Yeah.
the Gong Show movie.
And I was the coordinator on it, and I had so much fun with Chuck Barris. He was great to work with.
Cool.
And I did almost 100 Chuck Barris Gong Shows.
Wow.
But I did 25 in front of camera. But the others were outside watching the acts that he brought in.
Okay.
And if I see something dangerous, I would talk to Chuck and we'd take it out of the act so we know when we get hurt in front
Safety
of camera.
coordination. You've talked a lot about safety. I was listening to you talk earlier about it, and you mentioned it here. You know, one of the things I was curious about is stunts you've done, all the stunts that you did, especially, you know, back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Was there any stunt that you ever felt, like, what was your most dangerous stunt? What was the one that probably made you the most nervous?
Well, there's so many.
So many, right? Yeah, I can't imagine you can pinpoint
Work
one.
with the Europeans.
Little loose?
Yeah.
Little loose on the regulations?
Yeah, it's a different ballgame when you work with the
Yeah,
Europeans,
yeah.
the French or the Germans. They're not, even the Italians were terrible. And I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying that they didn't have the training.
Right.
They taught themselves thinking that was the way to go. So when I belong to the Stuntman Association of Motion Picture.
Right.
That is the elite organization for stunt people in Screen Actor Guild, AFTRA, and some of the guys are second unit directors in DGA.
Mm-hmm.
They've done multiple big shows all over the world for big companies and all that stuff. Well, in our organization, the stuntman, no matter how good you are, safety is always the principal thing.
Okay.
We don't want anybody die or
Right.
killed or whatever. A person who's watching it, who's not part of the information, or an extra, or a gaffer, or a cameraman, in some shots we might have 5 cameras,
Right. Right.
and there's 2 guys on a camera, and maybe a gaffer with a light, you know, from that direction. We don't want the car go off the track or whatever and hit those guys, and that happened.
Right.
There's been a lot of, I'll use an example, currently, The Walking Dead, here last year. A gentleman got killed by doing a fall off a barn, which was like 18 feet.
Yeah, I'd heard that.
And he was worried about it because he never did it before.
Right.
And that's the problem with the industry. On the type of shows, and they're in a different state, guys come out of the woodwork, and they've been training themselves, but they don't really understand the professional workout of understanding the safety, that when you do something, you have to have backup. You got to know what you're doing. If not, give it to somebody who knows how to do it.
Right.
I did that many times. If I didn't know how to do a gag, I call a guy up who does it all the time to make the scene the way it should be, instead of being me and make it look like BS.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so that's I learned that from all the old professionals that came out of the late 40s and the 50s, and they taught a lot to me. With new guys, they're not involved in the mechanics.
Do most folks not join the Stuntmen's Association?
No,
Is that
you
what
have to
you're
be
seeing
voted in.
nowadays?
You have to be
voted in?
voted, and most of the guys work in the industry doing TV or films or whatever, and they work with a professional guy who's in the business
Right.
and stuff. And so they become a little stable with that, you know, working with the guy and seeing how he works. Well, if he, you know, this guy might end up being a stunt coordinator on the show because he got in with the producers or the
Yeah.
director or whatever. Well, the organization looks at these people and they look at his resume, and he's in Screen Actor Guild and he's done this. Well, then he has to get 5 letters from members in the organization
Okay.
or more standing up for him. Then he's brought up to a vote to the membership, and the membership will vote for him. If they believe the guys who write the letter, then they'll vote for the character. If other people work with the guy and don't like the way he is, he's unsafe, they'll vote him down.
Blackball him.
But the majority is because we are in the United States, wins, you know.
Democracy.
And so I was very fortunate when they voted me in back in the early 70s.
That's cool.
There was 100 guys, professionals. I got 100% vote, no gigs or anything.
Cool.
They came out, in fact, when they had the general membership, everybody came, and it was one of the biggest meetings. You know, I was very surprised.
Oh, nice.
Because I was like a little turkey, you know. And, you know, just doing my job, trying to
Do
get
the
ahead.
job. Yeah, man.
And at that time, I was married and had, you know, having kids. My wife's having kids, not me, my wife.
Yeah, right.
And,
That'd be a stunt.
and you know, and we were, you know, I was trying to be a family man. But the industry, I work all night, work all day, I work on location, and it took a toll on my wife.
Yeah.
She was the vice president for Bank of America at that time.
Okay.
And she wanted me to be home, mow the lawn on Saturday, go to church on Sunday, go to work, be home at 5 o'clock. I wasn't that type of guy.
No, you don't have time for that. You got madness to do. You got stunts to do.
And so we would have big barbecue parties, and all the stunt guys and coordinators and directors would come over to the house, and we have all, and my wife would go in with the wives of the other people, and they would talk about the industry, trying to push my wife to be a little more whatever. Never did.
Never worked.
She just didn't like the business. And there are people like that. We are dear friends today.
Good. Good.
You know,
That's important, man.
We've been friends
Life's too short.
ever since I stopped paying and paid her a house and a car and everything. But that's a joke. But, anyway, we're friends, and our sons. I got 3 great sons. One's a journalist and he writes for all the media, and my second son is a federal police officer, and my third son is a accountant, mathematician for the state of California that looked into corporations. Accounts.
Accounts and
And so
finance.
They're
good.
bright guys.
Yeah, you got to be proud of them.
And I really am proud, and they're all good guys. They all got different personalities, thank God. But
None of them followed in your footsteps. None of them wanted to.
no,
be
I
in the
used to
industry?
take them on location with me, and they played little parts and stuff like that when they were kids. That was the only time I had with them. And then when I was on location, I would call them at home, and I'd do the homework over the telephone and stuff like that. But I used to take them on location, and then when they got older, I worked on Tecumseh out of Chillicothe, Ohio, which was an outdoor drama about Indians and pioneers and
Right.
all that stuff. And I would take them there for 2 weeks, and they would be put into the show as Indian, and it was great for little kids, you know, and they enjoyed it. The only one that wanted to be in the business was David, my second kid. And after he got out of the Navy, I put him in a couple films that I was doing, and he loved it. And
Okay.
I got him an A card, you know, Screen Actor Guild
Yeah,
card.
that's cool.
And all that stuff. Doing extra work and this and that, and he proved himself, and then he did the next con. Then he started meeting other professionals, et cetera, et cetera. But then one day he came to me and he said, "Dad, I don't want to be in the entertainment business anymore." He says, "I want to make money." Because, you know, he's starting out and he ain't making anything, right, except a few bucks. And then taxes took all that.
Yeah, took it all away.
And so I said, "What are you going to do?" And he says, "I'm going to be a police officer." So he
Okay.
went to college, and he majored in police, you know, and then he got into working for NASA
Oh, that's cool.
as a guard, you know, and then from there he went in, took a test, and he became a federal police officer. He's been a federal police officer now for over 10 years, and his situation is that he's trained in weaponry and all that to take out people who take out, might go to some school
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
violent, and his group is one of the best.
Kind of like an emergency response group to
Yeah.
a situation like
And
that.
they rehearse that all the time. And then other things too, which I
Yeah.
can't get into.
Of course.
And he's really dedicated federal police officer.
Good. Good, man. You got
And
a
my
crowd.
third kid, he's an accountant,
Yeah.
for the state of California.
Talk about making money.
So you got to keep your records straight.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't matter if I'm his dad. He's the dad. You keep your records straight. Yeah. So anyway,
Classic.
and then James, is the oldest, is he just turned 50, the 25th of October, and he's a journalist, and he's unbelievably one of the best. He does so many. So anyway, that's that. What else?
You had just mentioned earlier that it was the first time meeting John Carpenter on the set of Halloween.
Yeah.
But you worked with him again in like Escape from New York and things of that nature.
Yeah, I
right?
did Fog next.
And you did Fog next. That's right. I've got that on DVD too.
Yeah.
I love that work. So I guess my question would be, Carpenter and the different work that you did with him. Nowadays the internet's got every story imaginable on it and stuff like that. Are there any quirky things or any interesting things that happened between you and John during your time working with him that you'd like to share? Any good stories there?
Well, John is dedicated as a musician, first of all. In his heart, that's what he really is, a musician, writer, scorer, and all that stuff. The entertainment of filmmaking, and his dream or whatever, was that do a film so he could score the music, like Ron Zombie does.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing, except Ron Zombie is very violent.
Yeah. Very violent.
John's not that way.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
John was much more subtle, much more art craft.
He's brilliant. He's a
Yeah.
brilliant man. We had a real good relationship. On Fog, I ruptured our relationship because I was running a number of shows back in Hollywood, in Burbank area, Warner Bros. And Universal. Plus, I was putting up the A-Team live show
Oh, that's
for
cool.
Universal.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was hiring and training and directing. And then at nighttime, there was a lot of things going on. Well, John wanted me up there, and I told Deborah Hill when they decided they wanted me up on Fog, of what the subject matter was. And she said, well, we'll fly you up there, and you work all night, and we'll fly you back, and you go to work. I said, okay. But I said, I want to tell you, if you need somebody, hire somebody that's going to be up there all the time. So we had that information going. But so I would fly up there, work all night, then I fly back to Burbank, go to my work, go on these other shows. Then that night, I get the last plane out of Burbank and fly back up to San Francisco, drive up to the location. Well, after the third trip, John started getting a little perturbed at me
Oh no.
because he wanted me to stay there as like a crew member and forget about all that work down there. And John wants to be a family. He wants everybody
Interesting.
in that family.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. So
Understand.
he fell out of love with me.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
And no, it was fine because there was reasons.
Yeah.
He's a professional in his direction, I understand that, but I'm a professional in my direction, and I got obligations
Yeah.
back there from the studios and all the stuff, and contracts that I signed. And plus my health and welfare. But,
You're driving yourself.
But, so I finished that show up, and the next show was, they did was Escape from New York.
Yeah.
A year or more after that. And the reason, going back to Halloween, because they
Yeah.
all fit together here.
Yeah, they do.
Halloween opened up on Halloween Dine. Within 2 to 3 days, it bombed.
Yeah.
Nobody was going there.
Right.
Nobody was viewing, it's a typical, whatever. So the show was taken off of distribution and shelved. Well, John went to work at ABC doing a 2-part series of the Elvis Presley story
Okay.
with Kurt Russell.
That's
That's
cool.
when they become friends,
That's cool.
okay? So Deborah Hill sitting home wondering why Halloween, because that was her baby. And women couldn't progress in the business as writers, producers, or production managers, associate producers. They were always kept down as script girls or in wardrobe or makeup,
Yeah.
and maybe a few training ADs or something. So it was
Typecast.
really hard for a woman in the industry.
I bet.
Okay, so she opened up the door for a lot of people. She really did.
Right.
And so anyway, they came up with Escape from New York, and they interviewed Dick Warlock because Kurt Russell requested him, because Dick grew up with him at Disney when he was doing all those little kid shows. Well, Dick was a stand-in for him.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then as they grew up, and he got to know the people and the production people at Disney, it was like, what do you want to be? Well, Dick wanted to be an actor,
Yeah.
okay? He really wanted to be an actor. But because he knew the people at Disney's production, he started one or two coordinating, pratfalls, this and that. His training, I have no idea, okay? And then from there, he started doubling Dick. He's Kurt Russell, but he's really not a good double for Kurt Russell. He's not built the same way.
It wasn't the same as when they were kids, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but they're friends.
Yeah.
So he requested Dick as the stuntman coordinator on Escape from New York. Now, I hope Dick doesn't hear this, but anyway,
We won't send him a link.
Deborah Hill was calling me. She wanted me to coordinate it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, John is still a little upset with me about Fog, okay? And Kurt Russell requested Dick, so he wanted Dick.
Yeah.
I mean, two versus one.
Right.
Then what happened, then the situation was that Deborah kept calling me and said, I don't know Dick, he's not like you, you don't, and it's the same crew that did Halloween and Fog is now doing Escape from New York.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, look, Dick's a brother in the Stuntman Association. He can do the
Right.
job. And I wouldn't worry about it, you know. Dick hired a lot of stuntmen out of the Stuntman Association when they went back to St. Louis, where they did a lot of the supposed plane crash and all that stuff, because they were tearing down the waterfront and the building.
Yeah.
So anyway, they did all that, they came back and they did some pickup shots and stuff in Los Angeles. Well, the last day of shoot was the water, where the raft is,
Yeah.
and the helicopter, go back.
Yeah, and they blow
they
it up
blow
in the
you out.
water and.
Well, Deborah calls me, and I was working on a show, and she said, can you come in San Pedro on this date? And I looked at my calendar, I said, yeah, I can come in. And she said, I want you to do the water thing and do all the effects and everything, so we can really have a good shot. And I said, what show are we doing? And she said, Escape from New
Oh,
York.
she tricked you.
And I said, well, did you talk to Dick? He's the stunt coordinator. He might not want me on the show. Because, see, Dick didn't bring me on the show because he was, how would you put it? It's not immature. He was worried about, because I knew the crew so well, when he made a decision, they would all look at me
Yeah,
and
he
say,
didn't
is that
wanna-
okay?
He didn't want to be
And
usurped.
it was,
Yeah.
you know, and it makes him uncomfortable.
Right.
And a lot of coordinators are that way. So they won't hire talented people because they're afraid what happens with the crew and
Right.
because they know it. So that's the reason I didn't work the show all in St. Louis. So anyway, I drove in, I got out of my vet. Everybody's looking at me because nobody knew I was gonna be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And John came over and he
Notorious.
said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, Deborah called me and said, you're the stunt guy. Dick
smuggled
looked
you
at
into
me
New York.
and he said, well, it's your job, and he kind of walked away. And then Mike Johnson, who was the stuntman who was on the raft with me, tremendous athlete,
Okay.
and I've known him ever since he was a kid. He's a tremendous athlete, and a good stunt guy, high fall guys. So I rigged the raft, split it, put the explosions and all that, put the thing in there, talked to the helicopter guy, and they had the camera up there and all this subject matter. And we're in San Pedro now,
Okay. Yeah.
and we're waiting for darkness
Of course.
so we can shoot
Shoot
the
that
scene.
scene.
They're gonna put the spot and all that stuff on there. The water started getting choppy.
Yeah.
So the first shot from the flare gun hit me right in the back.
Oh.
That was an ouchie. And then the helicopter took off and they had some kind of conversation. And I said, I'm ready, man. So I re-rigged the batteries for the explosions and everything. And then they came back and they fired the second shot. I did the squib, it blew, and we went sky high and flew.
Yeah.
Then they did DG of the helicopter going back to the bridge in New York.
Right.
Okay, which I didn't care for. I thought it was terrible, DG. But anyway, that's my point of view. Who am I anyway?
Yeah, who are
And
any
so
of us?
I went back. The boat came out and picked us up, took us back to shore. I get out, everybody's gone. Everybody wrapped their cars, and the stunt guys, actors, and the only people who were there were the camera and some of the gaffers with the lights and stuff. And Deborah came over and said, great, great, they love it, everybody loved it. But everybody's gone. And that was the last day of the shoot.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's what happened on that. It was funny.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
but that's a trip, rigging all the explosives and
yeah,
stuff like that.
it was easy.
Yeah,
It
okay.
really was easy what
Yeah.
we did. But you know, the impression is that there's a lot of guys have a personality, good personalities, like I hope I have.
Yeah.
That a lot of stupid stuff happens and serious stuff happens. And if we can prevent it, we will.
Right.
But if you're on a show and they don't want to listen, then you back off and leave the show.
Right.
Under good condition. Now, some people believe that's a black mark because you're quitting the show for whatever, you know.
Right.
But when you have a coordinator or somebody and you have conflict, it's better not to create any more problems than what
Right.
it is because the production comes first.
It's easy enough to cause problems. Yeah, you don't need that.
So I turned down a lot of shows because of the characters
Safety.
of the people. I'm the first one. I'm not afraid. At my age today, what are they going to do to me?
Yeah, right.
You know, but like the culture of today, which is worse, was drugs.
Yeah.
And there was stunt guys who were going down to Tijuana and smuggling the drugs in.
Yeah, I bet that's
And
everywhere.
I didn't want to work with those guys.
Right.
And I end up working with them in San Francisco or Oakland or Oregon or wherever. And you emphasize safety and clean. I don't want your head all fogged up from.
No, not when you're doing that.
Yeah.
It's too dangerous.
And so I had some problems and some scuffles, which fortunately my martial art took care of that.
Good.
And they backed off and they were clean. Or I would talk to the coordinator and I said, put somebody else in my position because I don't want to work with these guys.
Right.
And the same way,
Understand
and a lot of the professional stunt guys are that way.
Right.
The people who do the opposite of what professional really means, you can't stop human nature,
Right.
but you don't want to put people in jeopardy,
No, you got to watch out.
especially when you're swinging cars like,
Right.
on Market Street or downtown Los Angeles or in New York. You don't want to lose the car because you got so much white stuff up your nose. Or
Right,
whatever.
exactly.
Well, the industry today is a lot of that stuff is cleaned up for a while, and now it's a total ball game.
Yeah.
It's a whole different game.
You can walk into anywhere. And it can
Yeah,
be-
I don't know. It's a real interesting business. I just finished doubling Stan Lee
Okay, that's
on
cool.
his new movie.
That's kind of cool.
You know,
That's good.
And out of the blue, they called me and asked me would I double Stan Lee driving the big limousine because he can't drive.
Right.
He's 95 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and he requested me.
That's cool.
And so Disney, and it was a Disney film, and it was his production of Marvel and all that. And so I swung that limousine out, and all that stuff, and then I pull the car over, and then we put him in there, and he gets out, and you see it.
Does his line, yeah.
Yeah, because he does
Yeah.
that in every film,
Yeah, he does.
one way or the other. You
That's
know?
so cool, man. I bet you not a lot of people would know that. That's
Yeah.
good.
So,
man.
but you know, and for John, when we got an award in Las Vegas for our work, tribute and stuff, he got the key to the city, and I got the award for outstanding work for Children's Miracle Network and
That's
all
great.
the film stuff
Yeah.
that I've done in Vegas for the last 10 years from everybody, and it was great. I got it Saturday, and John got it. Well, I haven't seen John in, God, I don't know how many years.
Wow.
And here we look like two gunfighters looking at each other. And I got some pictures in here
Cool.
that they took, and we talked, and he was gracious.
Good.
He did a
I
whole
hope so.
monologue on me. He wanted me to go to his concert, but I couldn't. I had to get back to Los Angeles. And he did a whole monologue before his concert started about the fall, the icon fall of all films,
Yeah.
and how I helped make Halloween.
Make
with
Halloween
all
happen, dude.
The good people that worked on it. And
That's fantastic.
I was just a tool.
Right.
And I mean, everybody was phenomenal. on
Well,
that.
one part of a great piece of work.
Yeah.
You know, I've watched those first two back to back to back repeatedly.
Yeah.
So,
That's basically the 180 degrees.
you gave me the true 180, man. Maybe even a 360, Jim.
And it was more than 5 minutes.
Right? Absolutely. I could talk to you forever, man, but I think we ran out of space on some of our devices. So.
Well, the guy who owns this place, come on.
Yeah, he's probably like, I want to go home. So listen, I'm Brendan Colopy with The Variant. I'm here with Jim Winburn at Arkham Comics in Wilson, North Carolina. And you know, Jim, it has been a pleasure, man.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Thank you
And,
for all the info.
remember, there's a film coming out called Witch's Island.
Which is
It was made down in Florida. And I don't know if it's released yet, but I star in it.
We'll check it out, my man. We'll check it out. For
Thank
sure.
you very much.
Jim, thanks so much, man. It was a pleasure, dude. I really enjoyed it, man.